Cool. And we live. Welcome to our Mochi podcast, episode 3, the only podcast rated R for Robin. Today, my guest is Vijay Michalik. Or is it Michalik?
Michalik is the pronunciation that I generally use, but it is kind of made up because it's a Polish name.
Oh, interesting. So, you're Indian with a Polish last name. How does that break up with what part of what is from what side of the family?
So my mom is full Indian. My dad is his parents were English and Polish. So his dad was a Polish war hero to some degree, actually.
Ooh.
And refugee to the UK. And my mom's parents were also refugees to the UK from Uganda. So.
Wow. So war hero from World War II or something?
Yeah, exactly. He was an Air Force pilot in Poland, and when they got kind of
Attacked.
When they got invaded, and sort of the Air Force was dismantled and stuff. He was like a prisoner of war, and then he managed to eventually escape to the UK and joined the Royal Air Force in the UK.
Damn.
So,
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of these cool stories about people joining the Air Force that I really wonder how much of that is ever going. It's probably never going to be the same, just because of how wars have kind of gotten away from the ground conflicts, and if you have an Air Force, you're probably trying to not do things to get the other country to think about nuking you.
Yeah, and I think there's a big element to which the kind of propaganda of war has changed a lot as well. We don't create these kind of stories of glorification, or at least we don't absorb them in the same way as we kind of used to. History isn't created in the same way.
Honestly, I think the closest thing, the most relevant thing our generation has to that experience and that hero worship has to be Star Wars. Right? the dogfights, and that's essentially what the Battlefront games are all about. And people have these fierce allegiances. No, fuck you. You can't side with the Empire about this. They're literal Nazis.
Yeah, I mean it's not a crazy comparison, because a lot of what was kind of portrayed to the average Joe back home during the war was these kind of propaganda videos that would broadcast at cinemas, and they were kind of crafted by film directors and all that kind of stuff. So you probably had a lot of the same kinds of stories, personalities that were elevated to kind of fictionalized levels and stuff like that. I haven't really thought about it that way, but definitely seems about right.
Yeah, where the whole idea of Empire, and then there's Empire rebels, and then there's just the smugglers and shit caught in between.
Yeah.
You never get. I think that's what. So I've never watched The Mandalorian. I hear it's good. I hear it's cool, but I don't know it. I hear one of the things that's really good about it is that it fleshes out the world, kind of puts a little bit more nuance to the sides, what's it like living with the Empire, what's it like being with the rebels. But just from the movies, I think the most you get in the outside world looking in is probably in The Last Jedi, or in The Rise of Skywalker, where they're the kids talking about, oh, I'm Luke Skywalker, I'm playing with these toys, take that, Darth Vader.
Yeah, it's funny to see cinema go kind of meta in that way, to try and use it as a way to flesh out the universe, but it's definitely very cheesy. But I think one of the interesting things about the Star Wars universe is that they there were kind of hundreds of books that people have made to flesh out this
that George Lucas also wrote, but a lot of them just got retconned when they were bought out by Disney.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense, streamlining in order to kind of craft the things that you can best monetize makes sense for a giant like Disney. But I think it's obviously one of those things where you get into this big kind of clash between what is the kind of initial core fan base's view of the canon versus what is the kind of owner of that franchise's view of it,
And is that fan base going
which
to
is
like sustain you monetarily for going into the future? But because like Star Wars also was just, it was a merchandising like gold mine. Just everybody wanted everything that looked remotely Star Wars. I was at an opera in Kiev, uh, like when I first got to Ukraine, and it was Faust, and
nice.
it was interesting. So it was the first time I had watched Faust. I have heard about it. I have like a rough understanding of the story, but the director for this version of it decided that he wanted to make it a little bit more palatable to younger audiences, and so he put like these like weird Star Wars generators in Faust's research lab. At some point, when like Mephistopheles is schmoozing around like the party guests, he like pulls out his phone and he like takes a fucking like mocking selfie, like eh. It was the worst thing I had ever seen. It made me hate
Oh no.
a production I heard was just like fantastic. It's all about the hubris of man and like,
Yeah.
and then you're trying to adapt it with like this the most shallow veneer of trying to pander to a younger audience, and it just came off so bad. And I feel so bad because like the performers were really good, the dancing was really cool, the singing was good, but
But that kind of level of being out of
just like,
touch
oh
was
my god,
jarring.
yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a few operas, but I haven't seen any that were like massively adapted. Um, I'd be interested to see what that's like actually. I've only ever seen like the really kind of classical settings or the modern operas in their intended setting.
I think it's one of the things that is a constant fear. Like, as we get older, are we going to be as out of touch as it seems the previous generations have been? Both with like things that are cool and like, you know, the proper way to like rear a child, and you know the proper way to market something and that's valuable as opposed to something that is just like, you know, a cash grab.
Yeah, I spent some time like thinking about education as a consultant of like kind of cutting edge tech and like basically how it could be used to kind of augment, supplement like education. And like one of the biggest things kind of generationally is that um, like the pace of change is just accelerating and accelerating. So building kind of tools by which you can help people learn and keep up to date basically as things progress is like one of the biggest challenges of our era. I don't think we're solving it necessarily at a pace that is as the pace that's required, but like I think for sure like we're kind of already adapted to this idea that like we kind of have to constantly be able to teach ourselves new things, like, you know, new programs or apps that are unlocked, like new kind of technologies
Yeah,
that are come out.
especially because like if we're trying to be constantly building things that are better, they're going to be less likely to break, and so you don't need to buy it as often. uh and so like, you know, the convenience of all these new things that are constantly coming out, you kind of have to lose sight at some point, just because like new things keep coming out, new things keep coming out, uh to where you often forget about like quality and like the purpose of creating a functional product that's supposed to be consumed by people, or that's supposed to be used to better people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a massive gap between the kind of the like direction that monetization and like, you know, venture capital model and stuff pushes companies and technology development relative to what is actually like net positive, beneficial for society. I think there are some super weird side effects to like, I guess, over-indexing on the opinions of venture capitalists and over-indexing on like certain types of growth
Yeah,
markers that don't necessarily like push society forward. Which is why you have like so many like infinite ways of entertaining yourself and like, you know, like vastly fewer resources going towards like solving big problems in some areas.
I think for me, one of the big questions is, especially like in the crypto space and like with decentralized apps and stuff, are we actually going to be able to make a full transition, make like a functional transition to eventually like some sort of like moneyless society that like that doesn't need to have people constantly working, to to survive.
I think it's definitely an interesting question. I think so. One of the things that, like, I guess is a little bit not worrying, but like historically, like whenever we've kind of increased productivity, like by sort of increasing technology and stuff like that, it's usually led to much worse situations for people. Like industrial revolution, like even sort of going back through to kind of agricultural stuff. Like it's actually been, from a kind of individual standpoint, not a great like not a massive step up in terms of the kind of ability to like control your own destiny.
Well, I
like,
think simultaneously that
your access to
they kind
resources.
of were accompanied by like people being able to evaluate their status in life, and that they were also accompanied by like changes in what we view as our rights as people. Children don't need to be working. Minorities shouldn't be paid less. Women shouldn't be paid less. Everybody should have the right to vote. And so, like right now, we're also still going through a huge transition. Like the U.S., just the wealthiest place in the world, with like arguably some of the worst gaps in wealth anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, like I think there's so many kind of systems that are set up to perpetuate like this kind of inequality and stuff that just kind of improving technology and sort of improving productivity and stuff like that. They aren't necessarily solutions. Like they kind of has to be they have to be kind of political and policy solutions to those issues
But
as
like
well.
while they're becoming more grossly profitable, just like everybody's trying to squeeze as much out of it as possible.
Yeah, I mean it's like the kind of AI like bent towards like making as many paper clips as possible. Like it's just gonna do it by the kind of shortest route that it can, even if it's not the best outcome. And we have all these like AIs kind of towards like helping monetize people's like decision making and buying behavior and preferences.
It
It
sounds like
doesn't necessarily. It doesn't,
Clippy from Microsoft Word has finally built a fucking army, and they're just trying to
yeah,
replicate themselves.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I kind of love the idea of like I don't know, like thinking about a fantasy character where it's like a warlock or something, like, and his patron is like Clippy, like just kind of like some kind of demonic helping agent. I feel like,
I see
yeah,
you're trying to take over the world. Need a little help?
yeah, exactly, yeah. It's such a weirdly disturbing character considering like it's so kind of banal in like the setting of Microsoft Office. I think they made he's made such an impact in the kind of cultural mindset. Uh, yeah,
he's
a lot of Clippy
he's
memes
certainly a generational meme. Like
for sure.
yeah, five years after us, like they're already on Microsoft 2010 or whatever, and 2010's like generations away from Clippy.
Yeah, and I
They had
think
like other options also for like the helper guy, but like Clippy was just the
yeah,
default that everybody knew.
yeah, I think there was like a dog and some like surfing thing. I've forgotten what it was, but yeah, I do remember that. One of the things that I find really funny is like thinking about, and I'm sure you've seen these kind of memes as well, but like, you know, uh, like kids these days would like have actually like no idea what the save icon is even referring to, like,
Oh, the floppy disk.
like floppy
Yeah, yeah.
disk, exactly.
Did you?
And, like the hand signals for things like picking up a phone call and taking a photo are just like not
Yeah,
understood.
yeah. Because like this thing was like when it was. So I think technically it was before it was a flip phone. So like to
Yeah,
us it was like this the finger would like flip open and then we could call. Even before that, the phones were just fucking huge, and so that's what that was.
yeah, yeah,
Like honestly, like the number pad for just regular phones from like when we were kids or whatever, that's the equivalent of like rotary phones to us when we were kids.
yeah, exactly. And it becomes like what are they called again? Uh, there's that philosophy who talks about uh, like how can it we sort of keep getting layers of abstraction away from reality. Like the original reality
Mm-hmm.
was like this floppy disk, and then like we came up with a floppy disk icon like for save, and then we just like have the like floppy disk icon with no like label attached to it. And then like obviously this generation comes along that has actually no idea what that thing
Mm-hmm.
is. They just know it means save. Um, I don't know. I just find that like a really interesting progression of like ideas and
Mm-hmm.
concepts that they just like we have these kind of icons that used to mean something but now just like don't mean anything at all.
Yeah, could you imagine like an archaeologist? I think this is always a funny thing that they do in cartoons, like an archaeologist digging up like our modern culture. Like if they open
Yeah.
up like a Windows 98 or a Windows Vista or something, they're like trying to decipher the hieroglyphics that are
Wing
yeah.
bits. Yeah.
What
Funny.
would you say is like a technology that you're like either really looking forward to or you're like really dreading, and you think is more or less coming in like the near future?
Uh, Dreading. Um, I don't know. Like, so I've always been like super interested in VR. I think there are so many cool concepts with
Mm-hmm.
it. And like I've been sort of trying out every generation of stuff that's come out since the Oculus
Mm-hmm.
DK1. So first developer kit came out Kickstarter. So I'm really like excited about how well that's progressing. Like I got Quest 2. I haven't really played it very much,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm kind of excited to be back in the UK for one reason only, and that's because my sister has a kind of solid gaming PC, and I
Oh,
can
nice.
finally play Half-Life Alyx um, with the Quest 2. But like
Are you more interested in
the amount
VR
that
or
that's
AR also? Does would you say AR kind of like rolls into that too?
I'm really interested in AR, but like I haven't seen like one. Obviously, it's a completely like different ball game in terms of
Mm-hmm.
requirements and like hardware and stuff. And I just haven't seen any kind of really cool concepts there in a way that like compels me as much as like being able to try out an Oculus Quest like 2 today
Mm-hmm.
and playing some games on it and stuff. Um, we had the Google Glass. There have been a few other ones, but like they mostly kind of sat at the like one sort of super expensive, like this is industrial
Mm-hmm.
wear end of the range, or like this isn't very good or
Yeah,
practical,
and it fucking
something
looked
you'd actually
stupid.
use. I mean, the fact that there was such a massive backlash to it, like the glass holes thing, like I kind of like seems like very natural in hindsight
Mm-hmm.
because like they literally made like a visible marker like of a class of people who had access to Google Glass and were also just like really obnoxious about it.
I posit that it would have gone on better. It would have come across better to the public if they were designed like the Scouters from Dragon Ball Z, and like I bet you that they would have been like so much better received. Like, could you imagine if the iPhones looked like Pokedexes and like
Yeah, I mean, I do love that. I think the main thing that people didn't like was like the idea that it was just recording you
mm-hmm.
without your consent, like just constantly.
Well, jokes on everybody because Google's already still doing that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I just find like so many of these like conspiracy theories about like tracking and microchips and stuff like hilarious because it's like you're literally being tracked so much better. Like it would be net worse for them if they had a microchip inside you because like that would give them less information than you're giving them by
Yeah.
like feeding your
The NSA, I don't
like
believe, was ever ordered to stop. Like even after like Snowden dumped everything, there was a lot of backlash, but I don't think they've ever had to stop, and more or less have just kind of continued doing what they've been doing.
yeah. I think it's something like they keep getting like a rolling extension or whatever to their
Yeah.
program. Yeah, it's nuts like how quickly stuff like that just evaporates from the public
Hmm.
perception. But I mean, they literally have like you know like I don't know how many hundreds of people devoted to like um, kind of internal propaganda and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, like Russia
surprised
though,
me.
they've certainly got these mills of people just trolling online and pretending to be like people who actually give a shit about stuff, and that's like I wonder what's like going on that front to try to combat that. You know?
Yeah, I find it like I find it really kind of like creepy, insidious. Like that there's a couple of kind of Instagram things that keep coming up in my recommendations, like just kind of like environmental accounts and stuff that sort of post like very kind of wholesome things about like here's some things you can do to to help save the planet, and like here's some cool projects that are going on. And then like underneath it at the top, it says this is like a Russian state-sponsored
Oh,
account,
Jesus.
and you're like, what the fuck? Like, this just seems like it couldn't possibly be doing anything like,
Insidious.
you know, exactly. But it must be like there's no reason that would be kind of paid for unless there was an agenda under it, and it's very hard to unpick it.
And like really, like Russia and the U.S. and I'm sure China to a degree are like the largest players in this. But how many other places are thinking to invest in that, because the digital warfare stuff that, like, I mean, it more or less started in like the 90s, 80s.
Yeah, I mean, and like North Korea, like, is sort of making a whole bunch of money out of like crypto, and part of that is actually kind of like their like North Korean state actors like doing like hacking of people's accounts and stuff, which is kind of nuts because I think it's very easy to dismiss like North Korea as like the strangely like insular like nuclear power with some disturbing elements to it, but like realizing that they actually do have kind of an international like technology capability, like that they can
They have
actually
a
sort of
they have like this entire city that's, I can't remember what the name of it is, but it's like this entire city that looks like it's a modern, it's like Seoul or it's like Tokyo or something. It's basically for just like the children of the military generals and whatever, and like they've got like bowling alleys and like movie theaters, and it's just for like the super rich of North Korea. Uh,
so
yeah,
strange.
it's essentially a city built for like the Paris Hiltons, but it's just like this like select group. Imagine like a high school, but it's essentially like have you watched Kill la Kill?
No, but I kind of I know a little bit about it.
Well,
Yeah.
take any Japanese high school like themed society, and that's essentially what that city is in North Korea.
When you said Japanese in high school, it made me think of what's it called? A battle royale. I was like,
Uh,
maybe not that one.
is a anime manga?
No, it's like a really famous. So like all these kind of video games that are talking about like battle royales and stuff, like they're actually based on this initial concept, I think, which was like a maybe like an 80s or 90s Japanese film, like real actors and stuff. But the concept was like in this kind of future dystopia, um, there's sort of mass like rebellion and rioting like amongst the kind of global populace, or maybe like Japanese populace, and the government's like solution to this was that like like a selection of random like teenagers from I don't know like whatever like 10th grade class, I don't know, however they old would
So
be,
is this like
be like
pre-Hunger
16
Games?
to 18. Yeah, Hunger Games. So Hunger Games is like definitely based on this, but it's basically like they would just ship like all of those kids to this island, and then like one of them would survive, and like that would kind of give them the kind of the like work ethic and the mental fortitude to like survive, like for Japan to survive. And it's like it's so disturbing because it's got that kind of like I guess Japanese brand of like body horror stuff in it that doesn't really exist in like Western cinema too much,
Yeah,
and all these other like really creepy elements to it. But yeah, like the fact like yeah, it kind of spawned all these other things like battle royale style video games, and obviously inspired the Hunger Games, all that.
yeah. Japan's got a really like weird record for both inspiring and being inspired by like Western tropes, like inspiring a lot of the weird body horror, like you said. That's a very like uniquely like thing that they'll put in all of their like manga, like their horror movies have just like inspired so many like bad ripoffs in the states. Uh, and just like a lot of their school stuff, it's almost always tied in, like in most countries too, it's almost always tied to like some sort of military record. And so when they make this connection between you succeed in the school and you're immediately like you're gonna succeed in the real world, and you have the mindset that's ready to take on the difficulties of adulthood, but then they're also like perpetually sexually trapped in that same space. So like
I think like the I think there are kind of few things that I find really interesting about like the way Japanese culture kind of pulls in like influences from elsewhere and then just kind of like remodels them in its own way. Like I've been traveling in Japan a few times, and
wherein
I think So when I first went to Japan, I was like 20, and I traveled from Tokyo across to Fukuoka, like by rail,
Hmm.
like stopped off a few places, um, and then when I went back last year, I just went to Tokyo and Kyoto.
Hmm.
I went and ran the Kyoto Marathon.
Oh wow.
Sorry, the no, I went around the Osaka Marathon. Yeah,
How many marathons have you done?
just one, whenever. I've never really been a runner. I just in 2019 I ran my first kind of competitive 5K and then
Hmm.
also ran a marathon. Well, I ran a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, and a marathon, and then that's me done. So no more running.
Yeah, I fucking hate running. Always have.
I see. I always had that thing. Like I just didn't enjoy doing it, and then like I don't know. I just kind of I set these like goals, and then I started doing it. Like I found like a good kind of I don't know. I kind of just like forced myself to get into it, and I was like super into it for the whole period,
Hmm.
and then like I haven't really had the urge to run since.
I mean, when you run a marathon afterwards, if you're not like immediately hooked, you're like done for life.
But when I had finished it, I was like, oh, I'll do another one at some point.
Hmm.
But I think coming back to the US after that and it being like midwinter, I just like I didn't want to go outside. So and then obviously like pandemic, I just like super didn't feel like running
Hmm.
through all the places in Williamsburg and Brooklyn that I had been before.
Hmm.
So just haven't got back into it. But I think I probably will again at some point. I want to beat my time.
What was your time?
It was like 4 hours and 20 minutes, and like I was hoping to come in at under 4 hours, but I had like a really bad kind of like pain in my hip.
So that's about like 7 miles an hour.
I have no idea.
Uh-huh. I saw this one video of it was like a treadmill that puts you at the pace of the most recent like world record, and he runs 17 miles an hour for his average, and it was just absurd. Like,
It's like sprinting,
yeah,
yeah, the whole way. Like sprinting faster than I could probably like comfortably sprint for
yeah.
sure.
I think something that's interesting to me with like the way Japan often presents its culture in like anime, manga, movies. They do an interesting job of like presenting their world as kind of encompassing the entire world. Like travel animes that are based in Japan, and then just like their animes that are just like all about their high school. It just makes the world seem like so huge when like technically Japan is roughly the same size as the UK.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think the population is around the same as well. It's like 100 million or
Hmm.
60 million or something.
It's also a funny thing to me with like people in the UK how people will say I won't drive 2 hours away to see family, or like an hour away, and like that's like the furthest drive you'll ever make in your life, and it's just like a nightmare. The U.S. is like between states it's that long.
Yeah, I think I think there are a few kind of reasons that one is that like uh, obviously like everything's a bit more dense, so you're going through so many different areas, and two like you'll hit like so many different varieties of traffic and roads and like intersections and stuff like that. Whereas like driving for 8 hours in the US sometimes is literally just keeping your foot on the gas and just
And
like
not falling asleep
waiting
and
to
dying, because that
yeah
happens too
exactly
all the time.
yeah exactly. So I don't know. I think yeah it's really funny to me that difference exists, but I can't really comment too much on it because like I did exactly enough driving to pass my driving test, so I have a
Hmm.
license, but I've literally never driven a car since. So
Hmm.
so I think I need to get back into like practicing at some point if I want to ever be able to drive again.
Do you plan on buying a car or at some point,
Um, Not necessarily, but it's just like from a practical standpoint, like there are a bunch of places that I would like to go,
and like be
or
able to
like would
rent a
have
car or
liked to.
something?
Yeah, exactly. Or like when I go back to UK, like I think particularly like pandemic times, like I definitely felt like I'd wanted to kind of escape New York, and it would have been much more convenient to do so in like a rented car
Hmm.
than like by trying to get on public transport and finding my way. Because like especially the US doesn't have excellent public transport in every
No, it does not.
direction. So yeah, so having being able to drive would have been a benefit. But
Does the UK would you say like the UK/London has like really good food?
yeah, so I guess like when I first moved to New York, like I didn't like I'd eaten a bunch of places here before, and I kind of had like a sense of kind of the food culture and the differences and stuff. But like uh, I think the sort of number one thing is just that like the kind of market and the kind of economy around eating in the UK is just like so different because people don't order takeaway like 7 nights a week. Um, so it's just like it doesn't exist the same density. You can't get like
But in terms of like diversity and like variety.
yeah. I think the diversity and variety is there in the UK for sure. But I think the kind of just the overall volume is less. So like you kind of have to search a little bit more sometimes, and like delivery isn't quite as like dense either. So it's like you couldn't necessarily get like everything delivered to you in one place. You'd kind of have to move around a little bit to get all of the different kind of restaurants delivering to you.
What would you say is like the thing you miss the most of like from back home?
Probably like good Indian food. So there's like really
That's the
really
same thing I've heard from every British person. It's funny kind of hearing that also from an Indian person.
yeah. I mean, I like as you might expect, have a very nuanced opinion of like what Indian food means as well. So there's like this kind of British variety of Indian
How
food,
high
which
is your
like
like
a
spice
fusion.
demand?
Uh, not super high. Like I think there are lots of people who like just push that to an extreme, but mine's like whatever fits the dish, um, and that can be fairly high sometimes. But like there's like this British Indian cuisine, which is kind of a fusion cuisine, which like exists almost like in every town in the entire UK, and it's basically um, like a very kind of standard format of like you'll get rice, you'll get a flatbread, you'll get like a kind of brightly colored curry dish of some variety, mostly meat dishes, and sometimes you'll get like some other snack foods like samosas and stuff on the side, and it's usually served with like several like pints of beer.
Oh,
So
nice.
that's like the kind of British curry house like cuisine. And then there's like all of the other kind of Indian, like actual Indian subcontinent cuisines, like like North Indian, like South Indian, like the kind of smaller snack food types, like the barbecues and the grills, and my family like uh, uh, especially spread around like North London has access to so many of those things, which is kind of great, but also something I definitely miss a little bit, and haven't been able to find all of since I've been here in New York. But I have found like a couple of things. Like if you're familiar with dosa, then there's a pretty good place in Brooklyn that does dosas.
I'm not sure what a dosa
and
is.
some other snack
Is it
foods.
related to a samosa?
Not really. I mean, they're both kind of like would traditionally be street foods, but a dosa is like kind of like a crispy thin. I think it's chickpea flour based kind of wrap thing, and then sort of usually have it with like a bunch of small pots of like like curries and sauces and dips and stuff, and usually with like a kind of spiced potato filling. But it's like just kind of a very kind of comforting meal with a lot of variety in terms of the tiny little pots of stuff that
How's
you
the
get.
like cost per like plate?
Super cheap.
How would you say?
So
Now that you're like living in the States, how would you say that like as far as like a comfort slash drunk person food, like Mexican food, would you say holds up to Indian food? Because like Mexican food is a
I would never eat.
say again?
Yeah. I would never eat Indian food when I was like super drunk. Like I don't
Oh.
think I would. I don't think I would crave it in that way. I like most like I definitely do eat Mexican food when I'm drunk a bunch. Yeah, so it almost like doesn't hold the same place in my mind
Gotcha.
for me.
Yeah, because
But
Mexican food is essentially what like Indian food is to British people for Americans.
I think that's right. Yeah. I I guess like I have no idea what the kind of relative population size is, but yeah, there's definitely like you know, chicken tikka masala. It's like one of the British national dishes, or maybe the British national dish. Um, and I feel like the same is probably true of like I don't know, burritos and tacos in some parts of the
Yeah.
U.S.
God, I can't wait to have Mexican food, like good Mexican food again.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely one thing I've appreciated a lot about New York is being able to have good Mexican food. There isn't there in the same quality in London for sure. And my dad lived for a couple of years in Mexico, so he's like making small dishes occasionally, but like we don't have access to the same quality of
Hmm.
ingredients or anything. Not like 20 different types of chilies
Yeah.
and all of the other kind of spices
You said you
and
said you
stuff
cook a
you can
lot
get.
too, right?
Yeah, so most British people cook for
But
themselves.
so do you cook
So
like a
most
bunch of
people,
Indian food, or what cuisine do you kind of gravitate towards?
yeah, I cook a lot of Indian food. I mean, there are a bunch of Indian dishes that are just so easy and convenient to
Hmm.
make, especially like vegetarian. That I kind of I have cooked a lot of it. I'd say like I do cook a lot less for myself now than I did when I first moved to New York. Partly because everything's so easy to
Hmm.
access and sort of being busy with work and it being so convenient. So I don't really cook as much as I used to, but definitely one of my favorite like sources of inspiration is like Indian food and stuff that my mom would cook for me or um, kind of quick recipes that I've
Hmm.
learned.
Yeah, I like making curry and like coconut curry, but I think the problem for me is just I don't know the difference between like there's like a fuckload of different Indian spices. There's a fuckload of
Yeah,
different curry spices, and it's all just curry to me. I've had a bunch of different ones, but I still really have I don't have the discerning palate, and I also don't have the recollection to remember the different names of every tiki whatever the masalas and the
yeah. I mean, one of the great things is if you're lucky enough to live close enough to a kind of a proper Indian like corner store or like some
Mhm.
like uh, shop, basically you can uh, like really authentic ones will actually have their own kind of house blends of like 20 different spices and you can just like pick up those instead of having to try and mix them
Mhm.
yourself. And what I've actually got, I've got like 10 of them still here and I'm not going to get through all of them before I move back. But you can get like just pre-prepared boxes as well of the
It's an
spice mixes
advertisement
and
for
like
anybody who wants to buy any of your stuff before you leave.
yeah, exactly, just please buy my stuff. I have a whole list. And I'll chuck in the spice box for free if you buy my pressure cooker.
Ooh, we had a pressure cooker when I first moved into this place, but like it was just one that the landlady left over, and she had like a friend pick it up. Kind of sad.
Got it. Yeah, I think I had much higher hopes for myself of like getting through a bunch of instant pot recipes when I moved here, but I have probably only cooked like the same three or four over and over again. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's a really cool device though, and like especially compared to the kind of fear that I initially had like cooking with a pressure cooker from my mom kind of exploding over the kitchen more than
Ooh,
once. It's very convenient and safe. So
yeah. Jumping topics. So I sat in on the DnD campaign that you guys are doing. It was interesting to watch. It was.
mm.
I can't say it was the most exciting for 4 a.m. for me.
Yeah, the ship battle stuff is like it just like
The ending
I
was
would say
satisfying, I'd say.
yeah, that's true. I think you saw us confound the
Yeah,
DM in a way that's quite entertaining to
summoning
watch.
summoning 8 wolves onto a ship. Nobody expects that at sea.
Yeah, well, three demons and 8 wolves, or sorry, 2 demons and 8 wolves. I think that was
That's
overwhelming.
some
But
Jack Sparrow level shit.
yeah, uh, like combat in D&D is definitely can be like very tedious sometimes, especially when it's like you know when it takes a really long
Hmm.
time. And that's one of the things that actually takes the most time of anything, like without anything really
The
progressing,
sea
because
battles,
you
you
have
mean?
to not necessarily just sea battles, but like all combat
Hmm.
really, because like you have to sort of do all of these roles, like and sort of everyone takes their turn, and people will spend time
Yeah.
thinking. Like combat can take like several hours to take place, and like in sort of in real world time, in the game or whatever, it will have only taken place over like a minute, and you've spent like so many
Hmm.
hours plotting it out.
So this the
Just
character you play, are you also? I was reading through some of the bios. There's a lot of spellcasters.
yeah, I think so I haven't played super. I haven't played like loads of D&D, and so I've never actually played a spellcaster character
Hmm.
before. I kind of wanted to, and then this kind of subclass is like a kind of sword fighter slash
Hmm.
spellcaster. So there's some cool things you could do
How'd
there.
you how'd you get started playing? How'd you like find the inspiration for your character?
I mean, I think most people who are like relatively nerdy, like have always like seen kind of D&D like slightly off there in the
Hmm.
distance, been
It's
as
always
like
peeking
a
over your
kind of
shoulder.
bastion of nerddom. Yeah, for sure. For me, I think the thing that I was like, I kind of told myself I would never do because that was the like last bastion of nerddom. It was like playing WoW.
Oh yeah.
But but uh, I I actually was introduced to like playing D&D when I was like in high
Hmm.
school. One of my friends at the time, his like dad basically had like played one of the oldest generations of D&D and like you know played a couple of games with
Hmm.
us, which was super fun. I think it kind of stuck in the back of my mind as something I'd like to do, but never really had a group of people to play
Playing
with.
like the
And
older
when I moved to
version.
New York, yeah, but I mean, I just like more generally wanted to sort of play at some point again in my
Hmm.
life, but never really met anyone to play with. And then when I moved to New York, like Ben Siegel, who
Hmm.
was like a friend of mine before I
Butter.
moved here, yeah, I don't know what his Slack handles are about. He makes the weirdest Slack handles, but uh, yeah, like he kind of just invited me to come play with some of his friends, and at that point, I just started kind of like listening to some D&D
Hmm.
podcasts. Um, there's really solid ones out there, like Critical Role is basically manned by a group of like professional voice actors, so they're
Hmm.
like very kind of good at embodying characters, and
It
then
really
like they're also
immerses
pretty
you in
good.
like the story and the drama that's going on.
Exactly, and then like that one's DM'd by Matt Mercer, who's just like I don't know, like Giga Brain, Big Brain, like DMing. He's just like a really really good storyteller, improviser, voice actor, sort of rolled all
Hmm.
into one, which is like the perfect storm of I think DMing Dungeons and Dragons, just because you have to kind of improvise all these storylines and these characters and their reactions like all at once when you're DM, whereas you only have to do like one character and one kind of set of actions as a
Would you say
player.
the game's
So
better or worse with like more people? Because I think you guys
um,
are playing with five or six
five,
plus the
yeah,
DM.
I yeah exactly. I think it kind of just depends like how people play off each other and sort
Hmm.
of like what the overall team dynamic is. I think there's a point at which it becomes a little bit awkward just because of like what I mentioned about combat and people taking their
Hmm.
turns, and even in sort of like less combat interactions, just like deciding who speaks and who kind of gets to decide like gets to move their person around. Because I think I don't know if it's like even worse over Zoom and stuff because you kind of have to wait for people to say something
Yeah,
before like to finish saying something before you can say something. It definitely like adds another layer to it. But
parties
trying
parties
to get
can also
everyone to
split
work.
up, right? In the story,
Yeah, yeah, no, they
it's
can, but
generally not
it's usually
great for the DM and like.
exactly and for the other players. Like, so uh, I had that in my game, and actually, it's one of the things that actually like D&D players like usually refer to as like the first rule of D&D
Don't
is
split the
like don't
party. Yeah.
split the party. Yeah, because most kind of combat encounters and stuff like that are geared towards like all of your party being
Hmm.
there. So if you like run into the trap the DM set with like only two of your players, then you'll probably
Yeah.
die.
Would you? What would you say is like
So
the like? What would you say is like the biggest pull for you, like playing the game? What would like? Is it the stories? Is it like the people that you like interact with? Is it like you said the combat's really like dragged out? Like what do you think is the most entertaining part for you?
yeah, I think it's just the story. Like with most things, the more kind of time you invest in them, the more like kind of uh,
Get invested.
the
Yeah.
more it kind of means to you, I guess. And like one kind of D&D is like a collaborative storytelling thing, so you're all kind of investing your own sort of time and effort into constructing the story
Hmm.
together. And then two, like it happens over such a long period of time. It's like you're dedicating like a few
It's like
hours
watching a TV
a week
show
for
like
every other week.
weekly.
Exactly, but like weekly for
Hmm.
years. Like some people play D&D games for like 10 years. Because it's like an evergreen kind of thing. You can just continue extending it out. You can close it out if it makes
Hmm.
sense to, or you can just continue playing forever and
How do you
ever.
usually play your character? How do you usually play the campaigns? Are you like chaotic neutral, lawful neutral?
I've tried to make interesting characters. I don't think I'm like super there yet. I think you kind of have to like go through it a few times before you really kind of hit your stride in terms of like making very interesting characters and like really kind of embodying them well. Because I think the first kind of time you play, you're trying to kind of learn all the mechanics and stuff. Then it's hard to put as much effort into like your personal story, and also you tend to embody one like more standard archetypes, and two like you kind of create a character that you identify with most closely, I think, the first time around. And then beyond that, then it's like more of a improvisational or like creative storytelling exercise once you kind of have all the mechanics down.
Yeah, as somebody who's been like always on the outside, kind of looking in at the potential of what D&D would be, I had this idea of a character. His name would be Roger Bear Sharknado, and he'd be a
Nice.
redneck elf. Because they're all like really inbred, and they're all given like they all have like that like really elegant flowy voice to them. No, they're all like really insular, very closed-minded people. I imagine they'd be like, "Oh, you goddamn dwarves, get off my fucking property!"
Yeah.
Grabs a hatchet and
that's a
tries to
good take.
cock it like a shotgun.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's amazing because like it's such a flexible system as well. Like there's obviously the kind of D&D core canon, but
And the
then,
objective,
like you can literally
yeah,
just
like the rules are just like do what you can to have fun. Like if a rule is unpleasant or if like a scenario is difficult, find a way that like people can figure it out and they can do something that would be goofy or whatever.
yeah, exactly. And like again, that kind of comes back to how the players are and what they want out of it and what the DM like can give to them. Like it's kind of infinitely flexible to play whatever kind of
Yeah.
game you want. Like
It's like a profoundly
with,
human exercise. Like it's something you can't
yeah,
do
and I
in a
think
lot of like sandbox games even.
exactly because it's all kind of theater of their mind type stuff. So like the game that Ben is DMing is like quite a kind of, I would say, like medieval fantasy. The one that I'm DMing is like based on Curse of Strahd, which is like a written module by Wizards of the Coast, and that's like it's like a kind of gothic horror, and so it's got its own like flavor. And then people like they make their sci-fi world, like people make like their kind of epic high
Like
fantasy
Warhammer,
worlds like
StarCraft,
that. Yeah,
Gundam.
yeah. I mean, it's exactly. And there are other RPG systems and stuff, but obviously like um, the D&D like 5e one has become very famous, and so there's so much stuff built for it.
Nice. Yeah, I'd hope to join at some point, but like, one, the time constraints. Two, like, you gotta be ready to invest like part of your soul into it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like there's so many ways you can be flexible about that as well. Well, one, actually, I'm gonna face the same or at least some degree of the same time issues once I move back to UK. So we'll see how we have to work that out. But two, like you can you can have like work with the DM to like add a character for like a few sessions and then disappears again, or
Falls
things
asleep
like
in
that.
another boat and is never to be seen again.
Yeah, I mean that literally happened in one of our one of our other games. One of the characters was like a kind of pirate type character who never kind of had a boat, and just like the player needed to stop playing for a bit, so they literally just like signed up with a crew and went off sailing. And at any point like the DM could sort of reintroduce them to the story if they needed or wanted to come back. They wanted to come back.
You ever play like any of the Fire Emblem games?
Yeah, I think we talked about that before, but like I totally got Fire Emblem confused with Secret of
Yeah.
Mana, and also like is it Fire Emblem? One of them has like something tactics.
There's Final Fantasy Tactics.
No, well, there's definitely another kind of RTS like in that kind of or like a turn-based strategy game like in that like kind of group of
The
I guess,
grid,
like
like chess characters.
yeah, exactly. Which I also was confusing Fire Emblem with. So like I totally didn't like expect the gameplay style of the latest game, which I haven't like bought or anything.
Three Houses?
I was checking out reviews. Yeah, Three Houses, and I was checking it out, and I I was like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was.
I think I'm at 200 or 300 hours in that game. I hate it. Yeah,
Wow.
I'm quite late into like fully deciding that I hate it, because like so I've been I haven't had like a 3DS. I haven't had like I haven't had a Wii U or anything, so I missed out on like a lot of the last iterations of the Fire Emblem games. So I was just as soon as the next Fire Emblem game came out, I was gonna get it, and it turned out to be just like a fucking high school drama with Fire Emblem on the side, and oh my god, like I finished one campaign. I think that first campaign took me like 130 hours, and that's because I was trying to like maximize characters, which you're supposed to want to do in the Fire Emblem games, but because you can recruit everybody, like and everything is just so omnidirectional with a lot of characters. It's just I resent that game for so many reasons.
I think Amanda would probably be an interesting person to chat to about that, because I think she's played it through like 3 times, whatever. I can't remember how many times you need to sort of play with each house.
There are a couple different endings. Yeah, all about them golden lions though. Main character's Brown. Okay. He shoots bow and arrow. He's part of like a merchant alliance as opposed to like either the church or the empire.
Nice.
Yeah. You much into anime and manga?
Yeah. I mean, I used to be a lot more. I wouldn't say I keep up with anything necessarily like right now.
Do you know anything about Attack on Titan?
Yeah. So I had actually been keeping up with the manga on that for a bit, just like out of curiosity. I just really wanted to know where the storyline was going to go. But I have no idea what's happened like recently.
I caught up with it this past week. It is so fucking dark.
Oh, nice.
Like,
yeah, exactly. I think the bit that I'd gotten to was like, like, I guess, spoiler alert for Attack on Titan. But like the point at which they'd kind of started, where you as the reader kind of start learning about this like outside world and what was going on there, and like, Aaron's half brother and stuff like that, like that kind of feeding into it and sort of expanding out the universe, I guess, of it a bit. And I was finding that really interesting, but at the same time there were so many kind of weird like dark layers to that, like around like the consumption of like different people and their powers.
It makes a very interesting transition from this like it's like a question of like what is the value of like survival as a species, and what are you willing to do to keep going on, and like in the face of like absolute extinction. It really plays out that I don't remember who said it. Any alternative is preferable to absolute extinction. But then it makes that hard turn to like an analogy for World War II and like the Jews and stuff.
Oh yeah. I think I was where I was getting to.
And it gets super super dark because like I guess it doesn't, it's not a perfect analogy in the sense that like in this world the Jews have this magical superpower that only them with their blood are able to turn into these giants. We're continuing spoilers. I think I'll put a timestamp for like when we're done with spoilers.
Okay.
But like then they go on the offensive and they just like murder so many fucking people.
Yeah, exactly. I think extent like leaning too far into how much you compare it to like the Jewish analogy, it becomes a little bit like, is this
supposed to be anti-Semitic?
Anti-Semitic? Yeah, exactly.
But like it also does, kind of posit this like realistic conundrum. If your people are going to be driven to extinction by the world that like largely hates you, like, I don't think I want to spoil it for you. So I think that's as far as I'll leave it, but it really gets into like I would say more realistic responses to this conundrum, both on the behalf of like the characters who are like the main characters, but then also the citizenry of like these two separated worlds of like the island and the world at large. Right now it's getting to a semi-hopeful part. I'm imagining they're gonna pull the rug out from under me right before the end, but yeah. I mean that's where it is right now.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, I just needed to talk to somebody about this because.
I mean, I was thinking like I really like stories that kind of evolve like almost like the genre over
Yeah.
time. Like they started off as kind of as this survival horror, and then it becomes like more of a kind of adventure story, and then it becomes like this kind of political drama. And then it's like there's the kind of mystery sections and stuff like that. It's quite like multi-layered.
It's always entertaining. Oh yeah, so done with spoilers. Let me get the time on this. Okay. It's always interesting watching animes slash mangas bridge the gap between their fantasy, their high fantasy world, and then something related to the real world. Like spoilers for Full Metal Alchemist, but that's been out for a long time. Uh, they're like the two anime adaptations. There's the one that came out in like 2000, and then like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood in 2005, which more closely follows the anime, or closely follows the manga. The original anime though, it like ends with them like swapping dimensions, and they end up in a pre World War II Nazi Germany, and they're just like trying to figure out how to get back to their world because like.
Yeah. Yeah, that one was kind of a mindfuck. That's kind of cool there.
Have you watched both of them?
I haven't. I much prefer Brotherhood. Like in.
I'm certainly in the minority in preferring the other one.
Okay. But like I just think like the kind of overarching story and sort of plot line and like some of the character development just makes a little bit more sense in Brotherhood. But I think there are some cool moments in the original.
I think in the original they did a much better job with I don't remember what the doctor's name was, but like the story where like he turns his daughter into the dog.
I don't remember what the difference is.
In the second one, it's a 1-episode thing. It's very brief. They don't develop the character very much. And in the original one, it's like a 5-episode thing. You're like meeting the entire family. You're like you're digging the into this puzzle of like what's going on here, and then you get hit with he fucking sacrificed his daughter for this shit, and then that hits real hard.
Yeah. So yeah. I really love the kind of setup in like kind of almost like horror storytelling where you just like you manage to kind of like really pull people along for like into a sense of safety, and then just like reveal to them like how wrong they were in their assumptions about what was really going on. Yeah, I'm trying to do that in my D&D game. Just
you're looking for the part to break everybody's hearts, and like I don't know if I can go on in this. You're trying to get like one of their characters to kill themselves.
They all killed themselves last episode. So.
Oh. Plot twist. It was all a dream.
Yeah.
Can you do that in a D&D thing?
Not quite.
Just like wake up one of the characters and it's like, oh, this was all a dream. You were the last 3 weeks you were playing out this fake scenario.
No, but I've seen things like that which were done well. Like like have the player think that they're like sort of doing one thing except they're actually doing something else, like kind of revealing to them like afterwards. But I think it's hard to do well just because like you kind of lean towards these cliches sometimes.
You got to be really creative to make it convincing.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And to make it kind of like unique and fresh rather than something that's a rehash.
What would you say is like your most favorite like recent I'm saying recent, but like what would you say is like one of the most compelling stories that you've kind of come across recently, either in the game or just like in media?
I've been reading like Hyperion for the first time, Hyperion Cantos, which I've really been enjoying. Like I think it's such a kind of.
Is this a book? Is this a
like? Yeah, it's a sci-fi series. It's like one of the kind of classic sci-fi series, and it's got like a lot of different. I think it's quite a long series of books, but it's like inspired so many other kind of sci-fi things since. But it's just like a really interesting kind of multi-layered story, like between the kind of personal dramas to the like the kind of political, and then the like very kind of existential questions as well. And again, it's got these kind of like two warring factions, or like several warring factions, but like there's like a massive AI faction. There's the kind of I guess like the almost like the empire, the kind of human, the human like the primary human faction, and then there's like these kind of I guess like they're personified as like barbarian type humans who like kind of were a splinter sect who just kind of like disappeared off into deep space and then kind of returned later and have like a completely different set of values
That
and
sounds like
stuff.
StarCraft.
But just like yeah, exactly. And I think you know to a certain degree like all of these stories like kind of come up again and again, like mapping the different factions together and like and you know you could probably map them to I don't know some like settlers invaders like story from kind of like different colonial eras and stuff like that in real human history. But yeah, it's like the kind of weird mythology of this universe and like I guess the way that these different societies interact with these kind of supernatural events and stuff like that in quite like a technology focused universe. I find that really interesting as like the kind of narrative of how that all wraps together.
Who's this by?
I think it's Arthur C. Clarke, but I've actually forgotten.
Is it one book or is it like a series?
No, it's a series. So the first book is called Hyperion, and then there's a series. There's a bunch of other ones after that. No, it's Dan Simmons. I got confused.
Yeah, I've been like so my goal right now in Mochi is like to do some writing, and like this last 2 weeks I've been struggling real hard because it's to write for an hour each day, and I certainly have not like worked out that muscle enough, but like trying to figure out what do I want there to be magic? Do I want there to be like religion? And if there is religion, are any of the gods real? Like, it's really hard to make these decisions. Like, if I want, depending on where I want to go with the story, and I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many different like philosophies I think are about writing fiction, and there are some people who literally start with like a fully fleshed out magic system that must work, like, and be sort of self-contained and logical. And there are some people like who just kind of start with almost like a history textbook worth of like this is the world's history, and then now I'm going to tell my story.
Yeah.
Some people make maps. Some people make maps first. I think that's quite common. Like
Some
D&D
people
things.
invent
You make
entire
your kind
fucking
of world map.
languages.
Yeah, exactly. So I think everyone has their own kind of individual like roots to that, and like it's probably maybe it's the kind of thing where you have to try a bunch of them to see which one works best. But one of the ones I always find most compelling about like story writing is to try and sort of like come up with your sort of characters and then come up with their like the kind of overarching like story you want to tell like about the people I guess that involved in it, and then sort of you can build out your flesh out the rest of the environment like through like kind of details you add in along the way as you figure it out, rather than
So
like
you
trying
said
to
you're
invent the world.
yeah you said you're DMing a game. Like how much of the world did like you craft? How much of the story did you like personally like have to invent on your own?
So the kind of the world already exists like in a book. It's like a pretty self-contained module. Like the actual is very usefully self-contained because like the idea is that there's like a curse preventing anyone from leaving this valley, which is very useful in terms of not allowing your players to like run like into the next continent over or whatever.
Run, Forrest, run!
Yeah, exactly. But like in terms of the actual kind of story, then there's like this is actually one of the most popular D&D modules ever.
Okay.
So it's like
so it's a pre-made
so
campaign.
many so it's pre-made campaign, but there are so many other kind of DMs who've written up their notes from like what happened during their gameplay and things that they thought worked well and things that they changed. So like I've incorporated like loads and loads of those into my kind of edits, and then also it's like how do you create a story that's fresh and compelling for your players, like based on the characters that they've created, like that sort of create like a progression for each of them and like goals that are unique for each of them.
How much like
based
prep
on
would you say
the character.
you had to do like before actually starting?
I probably didn't do enough prep, but I like read the whole book kind of cover to cover, and then I also like read like a lot of stuff online. But I don't know. I think actually like there's a balance between preparing too much and not
Yeah,
preparing
because
enough.
if
It's
you
like,
over prepare and like your players decide to like, oh, I'm gonna have sex with that orc, like
yeah, it's like, yeah, and exactly, you don't want to get too invested in any kind of one direction
Mhm.
because that kind of can sometimes lead you to railroad people into,
And you just get like
forcing them in
and you get just
direction that they don't want to
frustrated,
go.
or the players will get frustrated because like somebody's clearly trying to get like shoehorned into one scenario.
Yeah, exactly. So I've left mine like a lot more open ended than like by 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 virtue of like preparing like plot threads, but not like having written down the scripts of every single encounter or whatever. Which I think has its pros and
Hmm.
cons, but um, I've like added a lot of stuff to this game world basically to make it like fit the characters that are going into it a lot
Hmm.
better, and just to create some new stories like as a creative writing exercise, I suppose
Hmm.
as well.
You know, it's a very well put together, like closed world in my opinion. Avatar, The Last Airbender, and the Legend of Korra.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Like their
yeah.
magic
I really
system,
like.
there's like their like the way the world is built, and it's based on like specific cultures, and they've got like a level of technology that kind of like is more or less consistent. That is so well done. I think I like binge watched it like a year or two ago, all of it.
Yeah.
Oh god, and the animation's so good. The art is super cool.
Yeah, I agree, and I actually watched it all last year,
Hmm.
so um, like end to end, and I really like the kind of progression as well in like kind of one the world and two the kind of themes from like the Last Airbender and Legend of
Hmm.
Korra as well. Like I think, um, yeah, again, it has the same kind of thing of fleshing out the world, but also kind of building on like build the building blocks that were left
Yeah.
before it. And they really step up. I think the animation and the storytelling and stuff as well like becomes a lot more complex and nuanced.
One
And
thing they just kind of like leave in the dust after like they technically resolve it. The fucking
yeah,
chi blockers, the bending
yeah,
blocker people who like poke them, who are like Neji from Naruto and just like blocking all their chakra points and shit. They just dropped that off after like the first season when it was such a huge like it was just like a huge revelation of like benders aren't just like the most powerful people, and they can oppress whoever they want. There are people who are like learning kung fu shit to stop them, and they just don't do anything with that like for the rest of the series.
yeah, because they have those guys, and they also had the one spirit bender guy who was
Hmm.
like just like removing people's powers
Hmm.
permanently. Yeah, I think a lot of fantasy series basically have this issue of like constant like power
Yeah,
curve gains, like every character getting more and more powerful. Obviously, Dragon Ball Z is the most
absolutely.
hilarious example of it, just because like you know he gets a lot higher than being over you know power reading 9,000, but
Which was actually a
uh,
mistranslation. It was supposed to be 6,000. Yeah.
exactly, yeah, yeah. Um,
Have you
but I
have you watched the entire series? Are you like, do you follow Super at all?
no, I think I watched like almost all of Dragon Ball Z, and then or Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, and then I watched like a bit of Dragon Ball GT,
Hmm.
but like I think it was kind of hard to get any access to stuff beyond that when I was like watching when I was a kid.
Have you watched at all Dragon Ball Abridged on YouTube?
I've seen like clips of it. I haven't
Oh,
like
it's
watched
so
it
good.
like
It's the
sequentially.
best way to
It's so
consume
fun.
Dragon Ball Z. Like I can't in
Yeah,
good faith like tell a person to like watch through all of Dragon Ball Z just because it's so
yeah,
fucking long. Like if you want to watch like the actual content, you watch Dragon Ball Z Kai. Um, but like you can't go back and watch all of the anime. It would take way too fucking long. But the abridged, they do a great job of like summarizing the important plot points, but also capturing a lot of like the characters and their like flaws as people, while also still being fucking hilarious.
I think so. I think when I watched it all like sequentially, so I'd watched a bit of it on TV, but when I watched it all
Hmm.
sequentially, like um, I'd managed to sort of work out streaming or whatever by that point, and I was just like streaming it while doing my kind of homework or like any other kind of
Hmm.
schoolwork over a period of like years, I guess. uh, that's kind of how I got through
Yeah,
it.
that's
I
how
can't
long it
imagine
fucking
doing
takes
it
to
like
watch
as
that
a
show.
yeah, and I can't imagine doing it as like a primary activity. I think there are a few shows like that where it's like I could probably watch it while multitasking, but there's no way
Mhm.
I could sort of break through my attention deficit to watch it like as
Yeah,
a primary
Dragon Ball
activity.
Z certainly has that problem where you just can't spend all that time watching it. The original Dragon Ball though is a very well paced coherent story. They've got like a number of like tournament arcs and stuff, but like the fact that it was one of like the most it was the closest in taking notes from its source material, like Journey to the West, and like everything is in some way inspired by Journey to the West now in anime. But like Dragon Ball, they did a great job of like actually capturing and like reimagining a lot of the characters. Like Goku is the Monkey King, Oolong is Pigsy, Bulma is essentially like the monk who they're traveling with, and they go through all this like these magical adventures like to get this wish, and then like it gets to Dragon Ball Z and it's like, oh, aliens, and then androids, and then back to magic. It goes. I have like this essentially prepared speech summarizing Dragon Ball Z and like why Akira Toriyama is a fucking nut job in like the direction he tried to go. But that's already like it's its own like 1 hour podcast.
Yeah, I've heard some of those things before, but I don't like. I wouldn't say I'm an expert
Mhm.
on it. I do find it kind of really interesting, like, you know, just imagining being that kind of creative, like, person who's just been locked into
This one story.
like this super wrong long lasting thing, but also one that's like got so much kind of
Hmm.
popularity that you're like, trying to, I guess, uh, be influenced by, but also like, keeping your creative
Hmm.
direction and stuff.
Yeah, there are two other like really long running mangas still ongoing. Berserk and then One Piece.
Oh, I didn't even know Berserk was still
It
running.
I mean it's questionable because it fucking goes on hiatus for years at a time.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, no, it's still going, and it's still like making like right now it's in a questionably like it's in a very questionable space because like a really big plot thing happened recently, and everything's up in the air and like what's the main character going to be doing. But like those are also like profoundly like well written stories that the creator is still churning out, and it's like unbelievable how well made these stories have been in like 20-30 year spans. Funny thing, Kentaro Miura, the guy who made Berserk, started out drawing porn as a 16-year-old. That's how he got to start out as a mangaka.
I actually
He's either 16 or
so
14. He was doing it in high school and he got in trouble.
Jesus. Yeah, I think like a few kind of illustrator friends of mine like just like made a bunch of money as like kind of older teenagers like drawing like
Hmm.
commissions and some of the commissions were like definitely like lewd. I have no idea exactly what they were, but like I knew by association that they were
Hmm.
doing that, making money off it. I found it kind of hilarious at the time. But I guess if people are willing to pay for it,
It's crazy the things people are like willing to pay for. Like I get not no like fetish shaming here, but like there are some fetishes that deserve shame. Like I'd say one that really jumps out at me is like I don't get what's going on here. Vor, do you know anything about it?
yeah, I mean I kind of heard of it tangentially, but mostly in the context of like weird jokes
But it's like a
and
real
what's his name?
thing. I,
Yeah, Hammer.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, he's a famous actor, like sort of like renowned for being like very
Mm,
attractive. Like, I guess like probably comes up on those like sexiest man lists and stuff like that. But he just like got like is being publicly dragged for these messages coming out basically where he's like I think communicating with someone on Twitter on social media just like about his like uh vor fetish, and it's like so disturbing to people who just like been idolizing him as an attractive Hollywood actor.
and it's weird because it's
Um,
very much it's not cannibalism, though it technically is. It's like consuming a
yeah,
person whole.
yeah.
For any viewers who have
I
no
think
idea
they're
what vor is.
yeah, exactly. I think they're probably different subgenres of it.
Hmm.
I would imagine, but again, one of the things that generally steer clear of in the internet. Is
You run into it
things
and
that
you decide you jump in. You jump into the person's mouth or butthole, as like there is anal vor. Uh, there was I saw
yeah.
this one post on Facebook. So like Nickelodeon has, I don't know if they're doing like they're now streaming a bunch of their stuff that they had like previously released like when we were in high school and in middle school or whatever. But like Dan Schneider, who did like a bunch of TV shows, he did like iCarly, he did I think the Amanda Show, he did Drake and Josh. There's a lot of scenes with like
Oh, I've
feet
heard
and
things.
toes,
Yeah.
and like he posted a bunch of like things on Twitter like show us your craziest foot pics, and like I wonder how much like Dan Schneider was like sweating while he's like posting this like yeah, give me your fucking foot
Yeah.
pics.
Yeah, it's so bad. I think there are a few kind of like rights and directs like that where when you actually start watching their stuff like over a sequence of like you know their whole kind of back catalog, you start to get like
Oh, that's
they
what this
have
guy
like
was
weird
about.
things. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, prefer not to have realized that.
Yeah, it really changes how you have to like watch a lot of those shows.
Yeah, for sure. You can't unsee.
While we were doing like our pre-chat thing, we talked a bit about like Pokemon, and I was discussing with some friends earlier. If you were to take out 3 Pokemon from let's say the first generation or second generation, because we talked about like Pokemon that we love and you know like your go-tos. Which ones would you take out? Because every generation has some of these like really shitty, poorly designed Pokemon that everybody just wishes never existed, but they exist, unfortunately.
Um, yeah, so I never really got to the point of sort of super optimizing my team composition and sort of playing competitively in the earlier generations or in later generations. So like, I don't really know like if there are any that just mechanically terrible that I should be aware of. But
No, mostly
um,
like Pokemon designs.
Pokemon
Yeah, you know what I
designs.
mean? Like,
Jesus, yeah.
there's like ice cream Pokemon, and then there's Pokemon that is a sword. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, I guess like uh, they had they had. Oh yeah,
there's like a number of Pokemon where it's just like there's more of them. Like, Diglett, Dugtrio is just there's 3 of them, and they say a different
yeah. I
thing.
mean, I love the some of the. Have you seen like the kind of cartoons of like what Diglett actually looks like
Oh
on the
yeah,
ground?
or it's just like this
It's
buff dude, like.
yeah, exactly. Or it's actually like someone's toe, like some like larger creatures like toes
Yeah.
just sticking out the ground. That's so funny to me. But I don't know. It's pretty hard not to just like think, oh, I actually like that about that Pokemon and stuff. I mean, like coughing, wheezing, Grimer, and Muck, they're like pollution Pokemon, I guess.
Well, like, wheezing is yes, it is coughing, but it's also like tumors. It's very much like a cancer Pokemon.
Oh yeah, I mean it has that kind of like virus like appendages on the
Yeah,
outside, bit disturbing.
where there are certain Pokemon that are like an amalgamation of other Pokemon, like Dugtrio, which is like the bird thing with 3 heads, and then like
Yeah,
Magneton is like 3 Magnemites stuck together. It's kind of like terrifying to think about. Like this is
yeah,
your
it's a
evolution.
hive mind.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think there are lots of terrifying Pokemon, and like in some of the kind of well, one obviously like there's Voltorbs and Electrons, which
it's
literally
like you
just like
flip upside down and they get different eyebrows or something.
well, and they explode, they just like explode
Yeah,
after a little bit. There's like little bombs. Like, do they die? I don't know.
yeah. Even in like Pokemon Snap, where it kind of shows you what they do, like an Electro just explodes and it's like, I wish I didn't do that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you know, like there's fainting ghosts or something, just like doing something terrible as a response to danger.
You know, it kind of reminds me of do you watch Rick and Morty?
Yeah.
That episode with like the aliens. They're like the alien parasite thing latches on your face and then shits out an egg and dies.
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen that
I
one.
think it's season 4, I believe.
I think I haven't seen all of season
Mhm.
4 yet, just because like I think it was streaming in parts. I think maybe I saw the
Mhm.
first 4.
Oh man, shows I'm like constantly waiting for like the next season. Rick and Morty, South Park. Uh, South Park, which, man, I really hope that they're like that they kill Randy Marsh.
I actually don't know that much about it. It was always one of the things that like came up, in that kind of sequence of like, American cartoons that you could find on British TV
Mhm.
somewhere, but just never like got around to like even sort of I would say like until I was at university, I'd never really watched any of like Family Guy
Mhm.
or the ones that came out after that as
If you
well.
want a crash course in like American culture and the American sense of humor, just binge watch South Park.
Yeah, fair. I mean, I feel like
Like
so
a
much
lot of
of
the stuff is very topical and like really dated, but a lot of the jokes otherwise are they play very very well at like the whole these children kind of digesting like what's happening in the media and like what's happening with adults.
yeah, I think there are definitely certain kind of comedians and like writers who can kind of just like really pull apart some like deeper meaning out of like kind of I guess crass
Mm-hmm.
humor um, in a great way. And I think like I'm definitely aware that that's one of the things that's like really great about South Park.
It's
Um,
unbelievable though, like their release schedule and how they do that, where they make the episode within the span of 1 week. Uh, and when they have a season starting, they don't like gather stuff that's been going on like the past couple months. They do it like what happened this week, push out an episode, and like it's been gold. Uh, but yeah, like their biggest problem, like the most recent season that had come out, it's just like with the amount and like the volume and the speed at which insane shit was happening under like the Trump administration. They just didn't want to have to be like the voice of reason for this. They just want to make fun of like regular things.
yeah,
And so like the season finale for, I think it's like season 23 or season 24 or something. I don't remember what they're at right now. Is just hashtag end South Park. It's literally like the message they close out the season at, hashtag end South Park.
it's like set us free from the
Yeah.
soulscape. I mean, like hearing you describe that just reminds me a little bit of like speaking to people about Black Mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, like some people just really can't enjoy it just because it's like
Depressing and
so
dark.
it's like well it's so depressing and dark, but too it kind of sits right in that uncanny valley of like this is really like close to reality or this is
Yeah.
reality and it's like become real within the period of like it being out in a way that like just like can make you feel very depressed about the state of the world. So it's hard to convince those people to watch more
Mm-hmm.
of it because I think it's really really good. I think Charlie Brooker is an incredible writer.
Is it all written by
Um,
like one person or like I imagine a team, but like
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but so it's this kind of British satirist and columnist called Charlie Brooker,
mm-hmm.
who's kind of written it. And I think up until the most recent season, he was like writing all of it, and then like I think there are a few kind of collaborators and stuff brought in sort of as it got more Netflixed
Mm-hmm.
in terms of budget and stuff.
What?
But no, I think
Sorry, go on.
no, I just think like he's a kind of very I mean he's just like a kind of model satirist. Like he kind of unpicks the kind of real like core essential disturbing truths of some things in a way that I think is pretty cool.
I'd say like the most like fucked up episodes that I saw were the ones that had to do with like the potential. So with like AIs that are like that are people, like the one with like the dude who programs essentially like Star Trek.
Yeah, yeah. The third season I think was like all about but
There,
like simulated consciousness.
yeah. So there was that one, and then like also it's essentially like a Google Home, but it was like a version of you that was like pulled from the person's brain or something, and like that your existence in there, like the time dilation, could like just used as like a torture. Those things I think fucked me up the most. I haven't watched too many episodes, but like those, like the concept of a consciousness that do we have any real like responsibility, any moral defense of.
Yeah, I think that season was kind of interesting because it was the first one that had like a kind of continuous theme about like simulated consciousness and stuff. And actually, one of the very first, well, maybe the first ever Q-zine had a kind of like episode by episode like analysis of that season of Black Mirror in it, written by my friend Bert. So I'm sure Gabe could get you a copy somewhere. It's like one of my pieces of consensus memorabilia is that zine. But like the earlier seasons, I think are like a lot more kind of raw, like they're kind of British produced, and I think like they spread around a little bit more. But I think the stories are a lot more. I don't know. I find them a lot more fresh, like less Hollywood, just because like I guess the constraints of a lower production value, but also I think like the concepts are much more fresh.
If you had to say,
So I'd recommend that, but not the very first episode. Like the very first episode is like really hard.
season 3 or season 1?
It's of season 1. It's very hard to start someone on because it's like so. It's like quite extreme compared to the rest of the season, so it's hard to get people hooked. So I don't usually recommend people start there.
If you had to say, like, either a feature or like a group or something that like Mochi would like kind of needs, like the community, what would you say that would be? Because you've been on, you messaged me. You've been on since like batch 1, but technically, I think you would have been pre-batch 1 also.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was like more like batch 0 or like beta testers or whatever you call it. Yeah, I kind of realized that after I sent
The
it.
suckers, yeah, now we got it.
Yeah, exactly. The early suckers who gave our ETH. That's probably worth a lot now. No, not at all. I think. I mean, I think like I've sort of enjoyed it expanding into a bunch of different areas, and like I think each sort of person that spawns a new thing is like it's a cool additive thing, like the film club, the like, adventure club, like meditation. I think there's definitely room for more creative pursuits for sure. Like I think I haven't seen people like posting music that they've been producing or like or art they've been making and stuff like that, and I'm sure there's a lot more room for that. But
yeah,
I think it's
you mentioned that you play
it's
like
kind of how you coordinate. It's kind of how you coordinate as well, because like
yeah.
you don't necessarily like pull people in and be like, oh, here's a. I mean, you'd have to do something like pull people in and say, here's a kind of concept or a theme, like go away and produce something, and we come back and share it and work with each other on it.
Yeah, you mentioned that you play jazz, right? Oh, excuse me. Sax and piano.
Not so much anymore, but I used to a lot.
I thought it would be interesting if there was like some sort of group that was like jam sessions, because like they have like the study club, and they have just like the Mochi meets. It's like people who have instruments like sit in together and like play something. Oh.
Remote music performance is like kind of difficult / impossible, but there are some like creative hacks to do it, like having loops and stuff. But I've never actually successfully done any of those. So I wouldn't know where to start.
Yeah, I've been kind of depraved of like playing some music. I play a little bit of piano, but when I left China, we sold the keyboard that I had. I just haven't decided to like order another one.
Yeah, I bought a keyboard here expecting I'd play a lot more, but like I just haven't really over the past year. I played like every so often, but not like as much as I sometimes do. But I was sort of lucky in like pre-COVID times in New York. One of my well, actually, I think Bert, so one of my friends here in New York, like introduced me to another kind of colleague's boyfriend who like just has like a bunch of instruments in his basement, and like he had a guitar, bass, drums, keyboard, and we just like got really drunk and jammed out, which was really nice. Something I haven't done in a few years.
Are you like classically or like formally trained?
Yeah, so on piano, not at all. On saxophone,
Hmm.
yes. Like I actually started like playing clarinet when I was like
So did you switch to alto sax or tenor?
alto sax, and I've always wanted to have a tenor just so I could like sort of play both. But
Yeah, they say like
and my
the
dad had
best sax players are clarinet players primarily.
yeah, I don't know for sure, but I certainly know a lot of people who sort of make that progression from clarinet to
Hmm.
saxophone. But I was like fully classically trained on sax, even past the point of really wanting to be. I was kind of forced to continue going to the
Yeah.
same teacher because like the jazz teachers that were at my school, like they were fully like booked with students, so I could never switch
Hmm.
over. So even after I was like playing in like a bunch of jazz bands and um, like touring and stuff, like I was still working with the same classical
Hmm.
teacher. Uh, but on piano, my keyboard tutor was like very influential on me. He was a really interesting guy. He started off like as a kind of classically trained, but like super into all these like different varieties of music, like Latin jazz, soul, Motown, um, like neoclassical piano, which is where he started kind of doing his composing. And then he got into like DJing. He became
Ooh.
a drum and bass DJ and then a house DJ. And then like sort of later in life, like doing some production still, doing some like music teaching, and then also uh, he kind of helped us form like a soul band to like start doing kind of like more vocal soul
Hmm.
stuff with a small group, which is like kind of how I one of my starts. But he basically like just taught me how to play keyboards for like a soul and jazz band. Uh, like no real kind of classical training
Hmm.
whatsoever. Just like how to
Kind of like move through
read and
chords and like.
compose. Exactly, like literally just like how to kind of read chord sequences, how to like write chord
Hmm.
progressions, like how to do all these 10 different types of voicings for each type of like uh type of music. But like I'm not mechanically very good at piano at all, but I can kind of work my way around a chord sequence.
Yeah, I had like I learned how to play piano in high school, like watching YouTube videos specifically to get girls. Uh, didn't really,
Did it
nah,
work?
not really. But like I always kind of envied the ability to freeform and just kind of like start riffing and like jamming because I can only play like individual songs. I've memorized a bunch. I've got just like the muscle memory, but I can't say like one. I'm shitty at reading music. Piano. I played sax too, but like my reading's also still garbage.
Yeah.
But like I'm not. I know basic chords and stuff, but I don't know like chord progressions. I don't know like the music theory that like lets music kind of harmonize without you having it pre-planned.
I think there's a big part that just comes from like playing a lot of music. Like um, most of my knowledge isn't like very rooted in theory. It's mostly rooted in you know like knowing the kind of sound progression of different chords
Hmm.
and like just even like the muscle memory of uh, like the way the hand moves around different chord progressions, and then you can kind of do it in the context of like oh in a soul like piece like these kind of chord progressions and like this kind of muscle memory like clicks when I'm listening to soul
Hmm.
and same for like Motown, for Latin jazz,
What's your favorite genre?
for like soul stuff. Uh, I don't think I have a favorite genre. One genre I'm like really enjoying recently though is that like there's kind of like this jazz soul like um, kind of pop I guess like resurgence in music right now like in a few different places like there's the artist Tom Misch like I think he's and then there's like a few kind of people around him and related to him in the charts and in a few other places like very kind of strongly jazz influenced, like soul influenced
Hmm.
music is kind of becoming more popular again. And some of it's really, really great. Like I really like all of the stuff that Tom Misch and there was like an album last year, I think Tom Misch and Yusef Days, Yusef, forgotten his surname, like called 100 Days, which I really enjoyed. And uh, um, and then like Mr. Duke. So the I don't know if you know Bombay Bicycle Club. It's a band.
Hmm.
It's like popular in the UK at least for a bit. Their lead like singer and kind of band lead, I guess, like basically went off and just wanted to sort of do his own creative pursuit. So he just he actually locked himself on a container ship. He made a studio on a container ship and like sailed like with them for like 3 months or something. I can't remember how
Mm.
long. Like writing a new album, and it's like this really cool like jazz and soul influenced stuff, just like completely different from the sort of indie pop Mama Made Bicycle Club stuff. And like I just really enjoyed that album for sure as well, and I got to see him
Hmm.
live. There are things like that. Snarky Puppy, if you're familiar with those guys. Jacob Collier.
Yeah,
It's all stuff that's like become very popular, but is like really deeply rooted in like the jazz and kind of soul
yeah, I'm
genres.
very bad at like keeping. I don't know like shit about like new music that's coming out. I don't know where to look. I don't know who to follow, and like I just get thrown names constantly, so I touch almost none of them. Uh,
Yeah, I actually like I do find these days, and it's one of those like slightly disturbing, but like I don't know, maybe not into an insidious, too much of an insidious way. Like Spotify
mhm.
recommendations, like just give me so much of new music that I really like. And sometimes it's stuff that I wouldn't necessarily have gone searching for, and I just like add it to my like playlists and
Mhm.
stuff. And then yeah, recommendations from friends for sure.
I think the only thing I've been like really kind of keeping up with is Gorillaz. They put out like the Song Machine this past year. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed Plastic Beach for sure. Um,
I don't know. I've been listening back to a lot of like the stuff on Plastic Beach too, and I've been like coming around to it.
yeah, I think there are definitely albums before like where I've like kind of passed them over the first time and then come back to them and enjoyed them more. So maybe I should give it another
Hmm.
chance.
What is?
But like I loved the old Gorilla
Oh yeah,
stuff. So
Gorillaz. I fucking love. I love the ethos behind
it's
their
iconic.
like. There isn't original music anymore. There isn't like music that is music. So like we might as well create fake people who are behind it too.
But it's definitely like ahead of its time, I think.
Hmm. What is that platform? I remember my brother mentioned it a lot. Like it's like a thing Consensus has been investing in. It's about like kind of bringing the NFT space to for artists, for like musicians specifically.
So I think it's most likely you're talking about Ujo Music.
Yeah, Ujo.
Yeah, so you should probably speak to so Kyle, who works on the Wedge
Hmm.
team, is a former Ujo uh, member, so
So I
they'd probably be more qualified to speak about it than I
I kind
would.
of get like the whole
But
NFT
it
thing.
was kind of pre
Oh,
NFT,
okay.
like it was kind of pre NFT being a big thing. So like I think a lot of their concepts around NFTs were like very kind of early compared to everything that's out now for
Hmm.
sure.
So what is the like the whole thing of like ownership for like creative property and music and stuff, especially with like a lot of like the YouTube copyright strike shit that's been going on like for so many years now. What are there any like good solutions that are being kind of like created in the crypto space for that? Because I get
It's
it.
not something I'm super plugged
Uh-huh.
into. Um,
Because I kind of get it for like paintings. You can sell that as like as an object, and like music. Like in crypto voxels, there are people who like they showcase music in the properties that are built there. Um, but like where the individual like sound bites and stuff aren't just like recorded over like a thing. You know, I'm not. I don't. I get like the value in creating something that works. It's just I don't know what is supposed to be a thing that's going to work with that.
I think it's like one of those many things where very early on in the crypto space, like a lot of people had a very I think optimistic understanding of how the music industry worked and how all the different sort of financial pieces fit
Hmm.
together and like seats of power and ownership, and like particularly the Ujo team, I think in the music sphere, like we're running into I think all of those kind of like issues of power balances between different organizations and like like who owned the rights, like who kind of had the say in terms of what technology was being used and like particularly I think who was like where the power is shifting in terms of distribution and like the financial upside of that. So yeah, I think there are lots of problems to be solved, but the kind of the power dynamic and how you actually get change affected is like one of the things that certainly consensus was like running up against as a
Mm-hmm.
primary issue early on, because it was like so many very optimistic people and technologists, and like at that time I think you know, to some degree or another, uh, like a little bit more naivety than like,
I'd say it's
you know,
like sheer
practical
optimism.
experience.
There was
So
there was a lot of like
yeah,
technological
exactly.
optimism.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think that's probably a better way
It,
of
it
putting it.
reminds me very much of
Um,
like the whole thing like with as soon as like 3D printing came out, everybody's like, oh yeah,
yeah,
we're gonna be able to print out your whole arm. We're gonna be able to like uh, we're gonna be able to like make spaceships out of it immediately. But like costs and all these other like real constraints prevent like the
yeah,
lack of the infrastructure also to like build off
and
of.
I really don't like the kind of the concept of the like hype cycle, because I think it's like really poorly used in a lot of cases. But I think the actual model of it, like the overall model of it, kind of works, which is that you get this like this massive peak of inflated expectations, and then once you've sort of once you've sort of passed that and you've gone to the trough
Hmm.
where like everyone's like, well, it didn't do any of those things, so I guess it doesn't work at all. Then that's where you start slowly kind of building real value in terms of like use cases for stuff. I think that exists in pretty much every emerging technology that I've seen.
Yeah, it's kind of disturbing with like how like dominant the value of marketing specifically trumps like engineering, it trumps studies, it trumps uh practical like field use cases. It's all about how you like market it, and you're able to like continuously draw attention. You're able to get people to continuously invest in the thing.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, like that's one of the things where it's like such a systems problem, because the system is that you get investment and you get like kind of you get access to capital to actually try and build those things by creating these inflated
Hmm.
expectations. Like people don't buy into like you know, cautious like reasonable uh like, I guess, well
Well
calibrated
informed.
progression. Yeah, exactly. They only sort of people buy into like big hopes and dreams,
Hmm.
knowing that like, you know, if you fall short of those big hopes and dreams, you're still probably quite successful.
Yeah, of like the different interviews and podcasts I've listened to of like Joe Lubin, I'd say he does like a good job of like presenting the idea, but also not like overhyping it too much. Like there's enough broad strokes, but at the same time, uh, like it's the enough optimism in like the strength of the technology that like it gets people interested, but not like, oh, this is gonna be like immediate Bitcoin. Everything's gonna explode, and all this technology is gonna be like immediately in your face. I wonder how much of it is actually like like deliberately intentioned versus like accidental. This works.
Yeah, I mean, I think. Do you mean like accidental in terms of the technology and things being successful, or do you mean like in terms of the wording and how successful that is?
the,
Like,
how
which?
functional the wording is towards the way that like the infrastructure is already like being built out. There's a lot of like the word is out, and there are people building like really interesting things, really profoundly useful things, and like it gets people interested in that, and like that way they're optimistic about the technology without it being like blown out of proportion with like, do I need to invest a shitload in ether immediately?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a few things at play. Like one of them is like Joe's personality. Like Joe is definitely a, you know, he's not like that kind of uh like exceptionally over the top kind of like
Mm-hmm.
salesperson first type
It certainly
personality
does
that you
not
can
sound
see
like
in
a
a
car
bunch of
salesman.
places. Exactly, exactly. And I think you see that personality in so many other things that are like achieving hype. And that's like, you know, one, a big red flag, and two, just like leads to loads of those cases of just people just like becoming very, very popular for saying outlandish
Mm-hmm.
shit. Uh, rather than like kind of like this kind of cautious, progressive, like hopeful
Mm-hmm.
message, like anchored in like, you know, I think genuine belief in it, which is kind of
Mm-hmm.
cool. And that's one of the things that obviously attracted loads of people to work on Ethereum. And I think the other thing is that, like, in a very real sense, you know, at the very beginning of the Ethereum project, like, there were a bunch of like like it wasn't just teenagers. It was like these kind of older guys who had like some experience under their belts and kind of knew what they were like to some degree what they were setting themselves up for, and like they got like legal counsels. They got like a lot of recommendations around like what do we need to be saying and what can we not, what should we not be saying. I think Joe even talks about this in like recent podcasts and stuff. But it's like he kind of knew what they weren't allowed to be saying or like promoting or hyping from very early on. So like I think they've all known like what they like. They've all been sort of trained in that direction as well.
Yeah, that's one of the things like with I think it goes back to like the thing I mentioned with like products being built to be better. Like the marketing world is also playing at like more effective strategies. They have the data. They know what's going to be working. Like I had this conspiracy theory about like Justin Bieber. With like you're gonna go through this like you start out at this like this baby phase that like it gets the girls into you, and then you go through like this phase where everybody hates you because you're just being a shitty person, and then you make some sort of like comeback. How much of that is being like crafted, and how much like that happens in general with celebrities? Justin Bieber specifically, because I don't like him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly true, and it's like PR agencies basically working with people to create these personal narratives that help like help them get.
And they're getting better and better informed in like how they're supposed to be pitching these to people.
Yeah, and their kind of routes to market are like rumors, tabloids, and all that kind of thing. Like it's just like it's a. I mean, it's it's like a role playing exercise, right? Like you're literally like, you're working with like these real people to like craft a personal story for them, and they're like, yeah, I'll do that. And then you sort of set them up in their like game environment, I guess, like of these interviews and these like events where they have to like role play as the character that they're setting themselves up as. And it's definitely like it's disturbing, and it's kind of, I think it's accelerated obviously by all these reality shows where people are just doing it like on demand for like weeks and months on end. But it's like, kind of an inevitability of the system.
Who's the fucking OG for that though? Prince. Prince, and then the artist formerly known as Prince, and then the artist formerly known as the artist formerly known as Prince.
Exactly. He was getting like way too meta before people were kind of really getting into that level of understanding of like where celebrity was going.
I think one of my favorite quotes like regarding Prince was like from Michael Jackson. They were I think his like managers or something were like complaining to him that he was working way too hard. He was like stressing himself out so hard, and so like, why are you constantly working so hard? And he said, it's because like God's talking to me, and I gotta write it down. I gotta keep working because otherwise Prince is gonna write it down.
Yeah, I love that. He definitely seems like a very cool guy, like, from all the kind of secondhand.
Apparently, he was a like Jehovah's Witness, but he was like super like quiet about it, counter to like the normal stereotype, and he donated like shitloads of money. Like anonymously, just so like nobody would ever like give him problems about it. Cool dude.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
All right, Vijay, it's been about hour 50. Any last things that you'd like to plug? Any things that you'd like to mention?
No, not really. I don't have any projects to be announcing or anything, but I'll be broadcasting the Mochi chat as soon as I do.
There's a Adventure Club.
Yep, run by Ben Siegel.
Yeah.
Butter in Mochi Slack. Ping him about it.
But otherwise, thank you for being my guest. Thank you for the wonderful chat.
Likewise. No, it was really nice to chat to you.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you too. And we out.